Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I know that title sounds a little scary. Don't get denied. But I promise I'm not here to frighten you. I'm here to prepare you. As a 15-year flight attendant with over 15 years of experience, I've seen too many wonderful passengers, especially seniors, get turned away at security or denied boarding simply because they didn't know about the new rules that went into effect this year. And it breaks my heart every single time. The truth is, 2026 has brought some significant changes to airport procedures, and many of these changes impact older travelers more than anyone else. But here's the good news. With the right preparation, you can breeze through security and board your flight without a single hiccup. Today, I'm going to walk you through 7 critical rule changes you need to know before your next flight. These are things the airlines and TSA won't necessarily spell out for you, but I'm going to make sure you're fully prepared. Let's get started. Real ID requirements and enhanced documentation. Let's talk about the biggest change first, and this one is absolutely critical. Real ID compliance is no longer optional as of May 2025, and we're now enforcing it strictly in 2026. Here's what's really happening. Many seniors still have driver's licenses or state IDs that were issued before the Real ID Act requirements. I see this every single week. A passenger shows up at security with their regular driver's license, the same one they've been using for years, and TSA turns them away. They're confused, they're upset, and unfortunately, they miss their flight. In my experience, seniors are more likely to have older forms of ID because many of you don't renew your licenses as frequently, especially if you're not driving as much anymore, and I completely understand that. But here's what you need to know. If your driver's license or state ID doesn't have a star in the upper right corner, it's not Real ID compliant, and TSA will not accept it for domestic flights. Now, here's the thing most people don't realize. TSA agents told me that they're seeing more denials than ever because people assume their ID is fine since it hasn't expired. But expiration date and Real ID compliance are two completely different things. You could have an ID that's valid for another 5 years, but if it doesn't have that star, you cannot fly domestically. So what should you do? First, check your ID right now. Look for that star in the upper right corner. If you don't see it, you need to visit your local DMV and get a Real ID compliant license or state ID before your next flight. Yes, this means bringing additional documentation, usually your birth certificate or passport, proof of social security number, and 2 proofs of residency. I know it's a hassle, but trust me, it's much less of a hassle than being turned away at the airport. Here's my insider tip. If you have a valid U.S. passport or passport card, you're all set. These are automatically Real ID compliant. In fact, I always recommend that seniors carry their passport even for domestic travel, because it's universally accepted and avoids any confusion at security. Medical device and medication protocol changes. Now let's talk about something that affects many of my senior passengers. Traveling with medications and medical devices. TSA has implemented enhanced screening procedures in 2026, and if you're not prepared, this can cause serious delays or even prevent you from bringing necessary medications on board. Here's what's changed. TSA now requires that all prescription medications be in their original labeled containers with your name clearly visible. No more pill organizers for your carry-on unless you also have the original bottles with you. I've seen passengers have to surrender their weekly pill organizers because they couldn't prove what medications were inside. This is actually a safety measure. TSA needs to verify that what you're carrying matches prescription documentation. For liquid medications over 3.4 ounces, you're still allowed to bring them, but you must declare them separately at the security checkpoint. Here's what we flight attendants know that most passengers don't. TSA may now ask for a doctor's note or prescription documentation for liquid medications, especially if you're carrying large quantities. I always recommend keeping a letter from your physician that lists all your medications, especially if you're traveling with insulin, liquid pain medications, or any controlled substances. Medical devices like CPAP machines, oxygen concentrators, and nebulizers have new protocols too. You must notify the airline at least 48 hours before your flight if you're bringing any battery-operated medical device. The reason? Airlines need to ensure the batteries comply with FAA regulations, and some older devices don't meet the new lithium battery standards that went into effect this year. Here's my practical advice. Before you pack, call your airline's medical assistance line. Every major airline has one. Tell them exactly what devices you're bringing. They'll give you specific instructions and may send you documentation to print and bring with you. This simple phone call can save you hours of stress at the airport. And please arrive with extra time if you're traveling with medical equipment. I recommend at least 3 hours for domestic flights and 4 for international. The enhanced screening can take an additional 20-30 minutes, and you don't want to be rushing. Mobility assistance and pre-boarding rules. This next one is really important, and honestly, it's where I see a lot of confusion and frustration. Airlines have tightened their pre-boarding and wheelchair assistance policies in 2026, and you need to know what qualifies and what doesn't. Let's be real, airlines have been cracking down on pre-boarding because it was being abused. But unfortunately, this means that seniors who legitimately need assistance are now facing more scrutiny. Here's the truth. You can no longer just request a wheelchair when you arrive at the airport and automatically qualify for pre-boarding. Airlines now require advance notice, typically at least 24 hours, for wheelchair services. In my 15 years as a flight attendant, I've learned that the system works much better when you book assistance in advance. When you call to request a wheelchair, be specific about your needs. Do you need assistance from check-in to the gate, from gate to gate during connections, all the way to the aircraft seat? The more specific you are, the better service you'll receive. Here's what most people don't know. If you request a wheelchair, but you're able to walk to your seat once on the plane, you may be asked to board with your regular group instead of pre-boarding. The new policy is that pre-boarding is specifically for passengers who need extra time to get to their seats and stow their belongings, not just for anyone who requested wheelchair service to the gate. Now, I want to be very clear. If you genuinely need extra time to board due to mobility issues, you absolutely deserve pre-boarding, but you may need to briefly explain your situation to the gate agent. Don't be embarrassed about this. Gate agents aren't trying to deny you assistance. They're following new policies designed to ensure that the people who truly need pre-boarding are getting it. My advice? When you book your flight, add wheelchair assistance or special services to your reservation. Then, when you check in online 24 hours before your flight, verify that these services are noted. Finally, when you arrive at the airport, check in at the ticket counter or special services desk to confirm everything is arranged. These 3 steps will ensure you get the assistance you need without any surprises at the gate. Biometric screening and privacy options. Here's something that's brand new in 2026 and catching a lot of passengers off guard. Biometric screening, specifically facial recognition technology, is now being used at most major U.S. airports. And while this technology is designed to speed up the process, many seniors are uncomfortable with it, and you have the right to opt out. Here's what's really happening. When you approach security or when you board your flight, you may see cameras that want to scan your face instead of having an agent check your photo ID. The system compares your live image to the photo on your passport or driver's license. TSA and airlines say this makes things faster and more secure. But here's what they don't loudly advertise. Opting out is completely allowed. You are not required to participate in facial recognition screening. I've seen many passengers, especially seniors, feel pressured to just go along with it because they don't realize they have a choice. If you want to opt out, simply tell the TSA agent or gate agent, "I prefer manual verification," or "I'm opting out of biometric screening." They must provide you with the traditional process of visually comparing you to your ID. You will not face any penalties, delays, or additional scrutiny for opting out. This is your right. In my experience, many seniors opt out because of privacy concerns, and that's completely valid. Some feel uncomfortable with their image being stored in a database. Others have medical reasons. Certain eye conditions or facial differences can make the technology less accurate. Here's my insider take. The facial recognition system does work well for most people and can save you a few minutes. But if you're uncomfortable with it for any reason, don't feel pressured. The manual process is just as valid and really doesn't take that much longer. Your comfort and privacy matter. Digital boarding pass requirements. Let's talk about technology for a moment, because this is another area where new policies are affecting seniors more than other travelers. Airlines are pushing hard toward paperless boarding passes in 2026, and some are making it increasingly difficult to get paper boarding passes printed. Here's the truth. Many airlines now charge fees at check-in counters if you want a paper boarding pass printed, unless you have a specific reason for needing one. I've seen fees ranging from $5 to $25 per passenger. They want you to use their mobile apps and digital boarding passes on your smartphone. But here's what you need to know, and this is important. You can still get paper boarding passes without fees if you explain that you don't have a smartphone or that you prefer paper for accessibility reasons. Airlines must provide reasonable accommodations under the Air Carrier Access Act. They cannot force you to use a smartphone if you don't have one or aren't comfortable with the technology. In my experience, the key is knowing how to request this. When you check in online 24 hours before your flight, if you can't print your boarding pass at home, make a note of your confirmation number. When you arrive at the airport, go directly to a staffed check-in counter, not the self-service kiosk. Politely say, "I need a paper boarding pass printed, please. I don't have access to a smartphone." Most agents will print it for you without any fees. Some airports also have special assistance desks specifically for passengers who need help with technology or check-in. These are often near the main entrance or the security checkpoint. Don't hesitate to ask for help. Here's my practical tip. If you do have a smartphone but struggle with apps, ask a family member or friend to help you check in and screenshot your boarding pass. Then you can show that screenshot at security and at the gate. It's often easier than trying to navigate the airline app in real time at the airport. And one more thing, always have a backup. Even if you have a digital boarding pass, I recommend writing down your confirmation number and flight details on a piece of paper in your wallet. If your phone dies or the app malfunctions, you can still check in and get a paper boarding pass with that information. Enhanced security screening for passengers. 75 plus. This next section is specific to passengers aged 75 and older, and it's important that you understand what to expect. TSA has modified screening procedures for senior travelers, and while some changes make things easier, others require preparation. The good news first, TSA has a program called TSA PreCheck for seniors, and passengers 75 and older can keep their shoes, belts, and light jackets on during screening. You also don't have to remove laptops or liquids from your bag. This is standard for all passengers 75 and up, even if you don't have TSA PreCheck, though having PreCheck provides even more benefits. However, and this is the part many seniors don't expect, passengers 75 and older may be selected more frequently for additional screening. This isn't profiling based on age, it's part of TSA's random selection process, and statistically, it happens more often to seniors. The additional screening might include a pat-down or additional swabbing of your hands and belongings. Here's what I've learned from watching this process thousands of times. If you're selected for additional screening, stay calm and cooperative. TSA agents can request a private screening area if you prefer. You can also request that a companion accompany you during the screening. My biggest tip for seniors going through security: wear easy-to-remove shoes even though you may not have to take them off. Sometimes you'll be asked to remove them anyway, and if you're wearing complicated lace-up shoes or boots, this can slow you down. Slip-on shoes are your best friend at the airport. Also, empty your pockets completely before you get to the conveyor belt. Agents tell me that seniors often forget about items in pockets, tissues, coins, hard candies, and these can trigger the metal detector. Take an extra moment to check all your pockets before you walk through the scanner. One more insider secret. If you have joint replacements, a pacemaker, or any medical implants, you should carry a medical device card from your doctor. While TSA doesn't require this, it can speed up the process if the scanner detects metal in your body. Just hand the card to the agent and let them know about your implant before you go through the scanner. Time requirements and processing delays. Let's talk about timing, because this is where I see seniors run into the most trouble. The new security procedures, enhanced documentation checks, and increased passenger volume in 2026 mean that old arrival time recommendations are no longer adequate. Here's what airlines officially recommend. Arrive 2 hours before domestic flights and 3 hours before international flights. But here's what we flight attendants actually recommend for seniors, or anyone traveling with medical equipment, mobility assistance, or who wants to avoid stress. Add at least 1 extra hour to those recommendations. Why? In my experience, the official recommendations assume everything goes perfectly. They assume your real ID is in order, you don't need to check bags, you breeze through security, and you know exactly where your gate is. But real life doesn't work that way, especially with the new 2026 procedures. I've seen too many seniors miss flights because they arrived with just enough time according to the official guidelines. Then they hit a snag. Maybe there's a line at the special services desk to confirm wheelchair assistance, or maybe TSA selects them for additional screening, or maybe the airport is unfamiliar and it takes extra time to reach the gate. Suddenly, that 2-hour buffer isn't enough. Here's my golden rule. For domestic flights, arrive 3 hours early. For international flights, arrive 4 hours early. I know that sounds like a lot, and you might think you'll be sitting around with nothing to do. But here's the thing. Airports have plenty of seating areas, restaurants, and shops. It's far better to have extra time to relax at your gate than to be rushing and stressed, worried about missing your flight. Plus, if you do arrive early and everything goes smoothly, you'll have time to use the restroom calmly, get a coffee or snack, and board without feeling rushed. We see this on every flight. Passengers who arrive early are calmer, more comfortable, and have a much better travel experience overall. One more critical point. If you're flying out of a major hub like Atlanta, Chicago O'Hare, LAX, or JFK, add even more time. These airports are massive, and it can take 15-20 minutes just to walk from security to your gate. Factor in tram rides or train connections between terminals, and you can easily lose 30 minutes just navigating the airport. Here's what we're trained to tell passengers. Once boarding begins, the gate door closes 15 minutes before departure for domestic flights and 30 minutes for international flights. If you're not at the gate by then, you're not getting on that plane, even if you're standing right outside the door. Airlines are strict about this in 2026, and we're not allowed to hold flights for late passengers anymore. Okay, let's recap the 7 critical things you need to know about the new 2026 airport rules. 1. Make sure your ID is Real ID compliant with that gold star, or travel with your passport. 2. Keep medications in original labeled containers and notify your airline 48 hours in advance about medical devices. 3. Request wheelchair and mobility assistance at least 24 hours before your flight. 4. Know that you can opt out of facial recognition screening at any time. 5. You can still get paper boarding passes, but you may need to request them at a staffed counter. 6. If you're 75 or older, you can keep shoes on during screening, but be prepared for possible additional screening. And 7. Arrive at least 3 hours early for domestic flights and 4 hours for international flights. The bottom line is this: these new rules might seem overwhelming, but with proper preparation, you can handle them with confidence. You deserve to travel comfortably and safely, and you absolutely can do that in 2026. Don't let anyone make you feel like these changes are designed to keep you from flying. They're not. They're designed to make air travel safer for everyone, and with the information I've shared today, you're now fully prepared. If you found this helpful, please subscribe to the channel for more insider flight attendant tips. And let me know in the comments, are you planning a trip soon? What questions do you still have about the new airport procedures? I read every comment and I'm always happy to help. Safe travels, everyone, and I hope to see you on board soon.